Hello, this is Cynthia Sue Larson with realityshifters.com. Today talking with you about the power of observation. And much like breathing, observing is something we take for granted, yet we probably can't live without because errors of judgment in an observation or lack of observation, not noticing something, can be life-changing, to put it lightly. And obviously breathing matters a lot too. We often give about as much thought to either one of those, yet they're both at the foundation and core of consciousness and inspiration, if you want to look at it that way. So when we take a look at how we do this deceptively simple thing of observation, we could start by taking a look at quantum physics, where we have a very clear definition. What does that mean? What are we doing when we're making an observation in an experimental apparatus? Well, as you might suspect, physicists have a very clear nomenclature and definition for what they're talking about. So an observation would be recognized as an act by which one finds some information, the value of a physical observable quantity. So when you place an observational device, for example, in an experimental apparatus such as the double slit experiment, based on whether you put that little observational device inside the slit so it knows whether a particle has passed through that slit or not, or whether you're just placing it somewhere else, like looking at the screen and so forth. This makes a difference in the kind of results that you'll get, which is why there is something known as an observer effect, because it looks, for all purposes, intents and purposes, as if the observer is having a very clear influence on the outcome of all of these types of experiments, whether they're the very basic kind of double slit experiment or one of these newfangled ones. It's all the same. The observer definitely seems to have an effect. So the presence or absence of observers makes a big difference. And when you think that each one of us is an observer, and that we're part of nature, and we are participating in this whole thing, you might wonder, what's going on? My favorite way to look at the idea of consciousness and its relationship with observation is starting with the work of Leibniz, because he was a philosopher, Wilhelm Gottfried Leibniz. He also was the originator of calculus, one of the two people that came up with the idea for calculus. We still keep his nomenclature, his little swooshy signs to do integration and differentiation. Basically, Leibniz pointed out that a key quality of consciousness is that it necessarily involves both a first level and first order perception, where something is noticed, followed by a second order observation of the original perception. And that may seem kind of subtle or very obvious, but it's extremely important to notice that's the basis of our own sense of identity. Such that if we have a situation like this one, I've got a picture here of a person with a butterfly on their nose. You can see that illustration right here. And when you think about that, and if you were to have your eyes closed and you're just meditating in the garden and something lands on your nose, or you feel something in your nose, you open your eyes, you can imagine this, and then what you see in front of you and what you feel seems to match, and it looks, to all intents and purposes, to be a butterfly, something that you already recognize and know. So if that's the case, then you can do you're already doing a little assessment to determine, do you need to take any action? Is this a situation where you're in danger? Do you need to defend yourself? No. And then you can also ascertain whether this is something to be curious about. Has this ever happened before? Probably not. So then you might want to take a look at, just with a sense of curiosity and inquisitiveness, and take a look to see, why is this happening? But in that simple example, you're already noticing that you're giving yourself a sense of who you are based on your ability to perceive something. So it's connected with your sensory system, your physical body, that is. And it's also connected with your emotions, because probably something like that could be scary if you have a phobia about insects or just something touching your nose. It might be quite startling. But at any rate, it really enables us to get this idea, like, wow, we really are a person who has many levels of self, much more than just the physical body. We've got the emotional body, we've got our mind, and as you keep stepping back, and observing each one of these levels, you become capable of integrating at higher and higher levels of yourself. And what good is that? Fantastic good. This is one of the gifts that observation has the power to give us. Not only can we be an expert in a certain subject matter area, where you notice a lot of experts really pay attention to what they observe in a certain narrow spectrum of range of interest. You can do the same thing with observational awareness and bring a quality of wisdom to your life and ultimate awareness of what's going on, so that you're no longer, for example, triggered by things that at one point might have made you feel frightened, like a butterfly on your nose, when you start learning that you're safe and there's no need to feel terrified, anxious, angry, grief-stricken, all these dramatic kind of feelings, such as some people get when they feel triggered. So the ultimate goal, as I see it with observation, is it gives us the ability to rise above all of these kinds of triggering feelings where we need to restrict our participation in the world based on keeping ourselves safe. We are concerned that we've been traumatized before. Things have gone wrong. We have a great deal of trauma that we need to heal from, that we're still working on, and I get that. All of us are born with trauma. There's nobody that escapes from that. The key here, as I see it, is to acknowledge that each one of us is much, much greater with ever increasing levels of awareness and perception that go far higher than we are even ultimately currently conscious of in these bodies that we currently occupy. Yet sometimes we can have epiphanies. Sometimes we can really directly access this amazing level of awareness where we feel like we are one with our eternal, infinite, timeless self, the one that's operating free of any given construct of Boolean logic or linear timelines, but instead is capable of operating at a much higher order where you're already in cahoots with all of those friendly, wonderful, supporting, loving beings that are already with you. And so I think the fear usually comes in when we feel frightened because we feel alone, we feel vulnerable. And if you remind yourself through these levels of meditative connectedness, which I'm recommending that you can get through meditation, what happens is you can start feeling safe, even in the midst of chaos, uncertainty, and when other people seem to be telling you that there's all sorts of things to be afraid of. So it's not necessary to keep going into that same drama triangle that I've talked about before, and Lynn Forrest has a wonderful book on. Lots of people talk about it now, and you can see that even in the nervous system, there's a benefit, of course, to learning to relax and stay calm. And instead of constantly being in this inflammatory state of being where anything can set you off. Ideally, we don't want to be like that. So this is the idea, to access this eye of the beholder, where we can start seeing, yes, beauty is there in the eye of the beholder. Wisdom is there in the eye of the beholder. Love is there in the eye of the beholder. And we can start by really loving ourselves and recognizing that we can be our own best friends. We can be part of our own journey to awakening a very clear alignment with all levels of ourself. And when we do that, then we're no longer feeling like we're just being tugged and pulled around in all different directions, but we can attain very much a sovereign state and work in collaboration with others that we know are also accessing this similar level of being. So until next time, please keep asking my favorite question: how good can it get? This is Cynthia Sue Larson with realityshifters.com. Thanks so much.